Santiago Canyon College is an innovative learning community in Orange, California, with more than 260 certificate and degree programs. Santiago Canyon College is a proud sponsor of community programming and OC World.
OC World is made possible by the generous contributions of Marisla Foundation, Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation, Wells Fargo Bank, the University of California, Irvine, Orange County Community Foundation, Farmers and Merchants Bank, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelley Haas, CEO of the Orange County Community Foundation, and I'm so thrilled to be back with you here today, the OC World community. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with a new friend and colleague who I've enjoyed getting to know over these past few months, Orange County Sheriff Coroner Don Barnes. We're excited to be able to continue our conversation today and learn more about how the Orange County Sheriff's Department is protecting and serving all of us who call Orange County home. So thank you for being with us again today, Sheriff Barnes.
I'm glad to be back, and thanks for the opportunity to share the story of the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
In our many conversations, you never refer, and I believe the Orange County jail system is one of the largest in the country.
It is one of the largest. It's considered a mega jail.
But you do not refer to folks as inmates. Share with viewers, how do you refer to folks?
I'm trying to change the nomenclature of how we view. I think the term inmate, it's a legal term and it's a procedural term through a process. And I don't want to say it's demeaning, but I just don't want to look at people that way. They're not numbers, they're names. And I think if you change the way we view people in a process, I refer to them as people entrusted to our care. There's also an obligation that comes with that. Entrusting somebody or a responsibility onto us changes the way we perform our job, with a duty, with a purpose, with an opportunity to intervene and treat people oftentimes better than they treat themselves, but hopefully through our actions lift them up in a way that gets them engaged in their own welfare, well-being, and helps them leave here a better person. I can tell you that in the last several years, we've had instances like young women in our care leaving and telling the deputies who were responsible for them, thank you very much. In their words, not ours, thank you very much. It's the first time I feel like somebody cared about me. And they're not talking about the first time somebody cared about them while they're in a custodial environment. Right. They're referring to the first time somebody cared about them, legitimately cared about them. And I think if we can change that, give people hope in a way that restores their, their self-worth and their purpose, it's a win for everybody. And it's hard to explain this in ways, but there's no proud day of taking somebody's freedom from them. We do that for the protection of the public at times, and sometimes to protect people from themselves. But there's also an obligation we have to make them whole when they leave. And if people leave, and we can build the system out on both ends like I'm discussing, and have this off-ramping so people don't come here in the first place, and maybe some place for somebody to go when they leave. And if those people never come back, which means they never violated the law and they become better citizens, we all win. We all win. I believe I can probably reduce, if we can build the system out that robust, I believe I could reduce my jail population for probably about 15 to 20%, just with the low-lying fruit of people who happen through my jail on a very routine basis because they just can't find the help they need in a non-custodial environment. And that's the most important part. We're building that system out here in Orange County with other processes that we have underway. But I can tell the deputies that work in our jail, I think, have a heart for what they do. I have a behavioral health unit in the jail that focuses only on these behavioral health issues. Deputies who work only in those assignments, they're trained to the highest level of intervention strategy and de-escalation. I have 40 deputies in community that do nothing but behavioral health outreach, tell people who are in crisis and who might be experiencing homelessness or other issues. And I think when you look at the homeless population, I will argue that people didn't become homeless and then become mentally ill, or didn't become homeless and then become drug addicted. It's usually one or two of those other things that manifest into becoming homeless. And I'm a firm believer that we have opportunities to get people back on their feet and give them their lives back. It takes two. It takes also the individual to buy into their care and the services that we're offering them to help them get in a better place. Right. If they're absolutely service resistant, they're a very difficult population to work with. But that's not the county that we are. We have all these great opportunities that's incumbent upon the individual to buy in and participate in their care.
I've read that law enforcement agencies across the country are struggling. And I've heard even from some of our local police chiefs in Orange County struggling to recruit new folks onto their forces. What has your experience been with that, with the Sheriff's Department?
Well, I hate to say this, but we're doing great. And I don't mean to say that others aren't. And I don't know why that is. I think when you have some of the challenges that happen nationally, regionally, what I've heard from people who have selected to come work for us is they want to work in a department that supports them, that trusts them to do the job, allows them to do the job they're hired and trained to do, and others, I won't say who, but others they've left some of these organizations to just be able to do their job. But it's even beyond that. When you look at the environment we're hiring in on a national platform, a lot of the areas that are struggling are really struggling because of political environments that have been created around their law enforcement agencies, not as a fault of the organization itself. Some are struggling because of budgetary concerns, and people feel like, I might not have a job last year. I was the last one hired in. Am I going to be able to make the next budget cycle? If there's position reduction, and they want to make a proactive choice to move somewhere where they might feel more safe in that. And we all have challenges with budgets, and you have to make it work. So those are things that you learn to navigate over time. But I think what I hope most importantly about this organization, and we've seen this happen through some of the community engagement we've had, sometimes people will make attestations publicly about what they believe we do to find out we don't do any of it. But in this organization, I see one thing only. I see a green uniform or the professional staff. I don't care about your sexual orientation. I don't care about your height. I don't care about your gender. I care about your ability to do this job and do it well. And we have a diverse workforce. I think that's represented, but it's not truly representative of the community. We've been striving to hire more women for decades, and we had this huge marketing push years ago to start raising the number of women we had in the organization. And we went from 13% to 14% to 15% to 18%. We kept moving this needle up. And one of my staff, I was an assistant sheriff at the time, one of my staff said, Sheriff, what's the target? When are we going to get there? When is enough? And I said, well, if you want to be representative of the community, when we got 51% female, because that's what the community representation is. There's no ceiling, right? We don't have a ceiling to do this. And it's also somewhat challenging when you deal with some of the impactful issues we've addressed as a profession nationally, post George Floyd, for example. And we had these racial relation issues between policing organizations and the communities in which they served. And it was really hard for me at times. We responded to over 80 protests and demonstrations post George Floyd. And I'll just go on the record and say this. I may have been the first law enforcement leader nationally to make a public statement against what happened against George Floyd in Minneapolis. It was wrong from its beginning. I've never seen that ever as a tactic. To think they trained that as a training environment to put a knee on a neck, I was beyond bothered by that. It was absolutely unexplainable. You can't explain your way through that. But after that, it didn't matter that it was there and we're here and that we never did that. We got splashed with the paint like everybody else. It became this national narrative about what we all do, even regardless of what we don't do here. But what bothered me about this is we want to be reflective of the community, and that includes hiring different races and ethnicities. And I had deputies working for me who are black and going to these protests, and the same people are yelling that we don't have enough members of our department who are black, while at the same time criticizing the members who are black for being in law enforcement. So they're getting it from both sides. It's a no-win circumstance. But I think I'll explain the irony of some of these people. There was one campaign called 8 Can't Wait, and it was this national movement of these are the 8 things every law enforcement profession or organization must do. And somebody walked up to me in a public environment and handed me this list and said, Sheriff, you have to do these 8 things. And I read the 8 and I said, I agree. So much so that we're already doing all 8 of these things. So sometimes people just don't know what we don't do. They have this belief that we're all just ogres and we intend on, not meeting the public's expectations.
Yeah.
We always have to have this dialogue with the public and what they want from us. And you have to morph and change along with public expectations and sentiment. If we did this job the same way that I started in the 80s today, we would not be in existence as a profession. Not that we did anything wrong, we just wouldn't have progressed along the way based on the demands of the community and keeping it safe.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, as Orange County's sheriff, what keeps you up at night? Because I'm thinking maybe that should also be keeping all of us up at night. But if you're up at night thinking about it and preparing for it, that's probably best for all of us. So what's on your mind about risks, or what you worry about for the safety of this community?
Well, first, what keeps me up at night is my little Brussels Griffon dog. She sleeps between my wife and I. That's a joke. Best dog ever. I first let me preface my answer with, there's not a lot of things that keep me up. I trust the people who work here to keep us safe, and we have a great team. But there are significant changes and challenges that have happened over time that weren't in existence 35 years ago when I started here. 35 years ago, Shelley would be concerned about getting robbed at the ATM. Well, you can have all your entire bank account drained from the other side of the world through cyber and other scams and ways of defrauding you out of your identity or out of your bank accounts, or getting you to voluntarily give up things in ways that you don't know not to trust. That's just one environment. The cyber risk is probably the greatest risk that we're facing as a nation for many different ways. Cyber-enabled crime, cyber-defined crime, hacks, the ransomware, all the different ways that we are unknowingly subjecting ourselves to things that put us at risk. OCSheriff.gov website, Be Safe OC is our crime reduction strategy. There's tools and tips on there of what not to do in a cyber environment, especially with your kids. If your kids are operating in a cyber environment, which means online, they need to be told these are the guardrails, because they may think they're talking to another 13-year-old boy. Your daughter is talking to a 13-year-old boy and they have like interest, and it's really a 58-year-old pedophile that they have no idea who's claimed this identity and attempting to get things from them. And young children with the adolescent developing brain will do stupid things about giving information up, like selfies that are inappropriate and other things, and they get held ransom for that, hostage to these bad decisions they make. Not malicious on their part, they just get coaxed into doing these things.
Well, and one of the things again, in my growing file of things I didn't know before, the Orange County Sheriff has a very active cyber security unit.
Yes,
that's part of
team.
your services, right?
Yeah, we have a cyber team, and it's the only cyber team in Orange County. The FBI has cyber teams as well. They're LA based. They have different thresholds for taking a case because it's a federal agency. We'll take cases that come up that are brought to our attention. We strive to do our best, and we've had really good outcomes in getting people their money back. I had one case that was brought to me, not in our jurisdiction. It was another jurisdiction. Somebody who I spoke at an event. The next day, this individual at the event called me and said, "You mentioned you have this. I have a client. This happened to them." It was called a business email compromise, which is sending an email that says, "Shelley, please pay this invoice right now. It's $500,000, and it gets duped, and you send money to wire money somewhere where it doesn't go." And it's that type of environment. This was a real estate transaction that said, "Send your money to escrow. Here's the wire account." It wasn't legitimate, and $1.1 million got wired away. And they explained to me that it was actually contemporaneous, or it happened within it was actually 6 days stale. By the time we got that information, I checked with the local municipal agency's chief. I said, "This is brought to my attention. Would you mind if we took a look at it?" He said, "Please do. We don't have the capacity to do that." And our investigators took on that case. 6 days stale, which means that money is probably moved 2 or 3 times. Usually the third time is when it's going to go OCONUS, outside the continental United States, to an offshore account. It'll make its way back to Africa or Russia or somewhere else. We actually trailed that money, found it, put what's called a financial kill chain, which means you stop the money, you freeze the money, and you stop it from moving until you can prove that it was taken feloniously, and you make the proper documentation to give it back to the owner. We got all $1.1 million back for this very elderly lady. That was her life savings, that she was making one last business transaction for her lifetime home. And I'm not sure what would have happened to her, but that's one of several experiences we had positively. It doesn't always work out that way, but what I know we can't do is we cannot intervene and interdict money being moved if we don't know about it, and usually the faster. The one other thing I'll talk about that is, I'll say two more things that I think that are the big boulders we're facing. The drug trafficking issue through the very porous border. I don't want to make this a policy issue on the border, but you can't have border security if you don't have a secure border. We have to secure the border for the benefit of our country, and that means drug trafficking, fentanyl, other things. We identified through the Orange County Crime Lab, which we run in Orange County, internationally credited, the first presence of fentanyl west of the Mississippi back in 2015. And since that time, 9 years ago, we have taken very intentional efforts to try to address the fentanyl crisis, educate the public through forums and other ways, and interdict fentanyl that's coming over the border. In 2013, we interdicted over 800 pounds of pure fentanyl, which is an enormous amount of fentanyl, enough to kill the entire state of California, and over 850,000 fentanyl clandestine pills that are designed and pressed to look like Xanax and OxyContin and other things that don't have any pharmaceutical quality in them other than fentanyl, and they have toxic levels. I'm also the county coroner, and in our coroner death cases we have for fentanyl, we've seen the presence of fentanyl, the lethal levels of fentanyl in deceased persons up to 36 times the lethal level of fentanyl, which just goes to show that the cartels are really good at making them look like legitimate pills. They're not really good at blending the chemicals at a way that distributes them to a level that's not toxic. And the last thing I'll end with is are the risks that have risen up over time from abroad. The terrorist organizations, the foreign organizations that want to do us harm, that are now present at our border or probably within the continental United States because of the lack of border security. In 2013, between the last two federal fiscal years, we had 1.4 million gotaways. That means people that made it into our country without anybody catching them. We have no idea who they are, what their intent is. And I'm not saying they all have felonious or malicious intent, but we do know that during that same year, the 1 year when 800,000 came over, there were 157 people encountered at our southern border who are on the FBI terror watch list. So if you just follow the math of people who got away, I think we could safely assume that some of those people successfully made it into the country without us knowing. And they're now living amongst us who probably don't have friendly intent. Now, I just want to clarify for the viewers, I'm not saying everybody who comes to this country is here for the wrong reason. Many of them come for the right reason, to chase the American dream, and you can't fault them for doing that. But there's got to be a system in place of vetting people to get them in and follow the rules coming in doing that. So, after 9/11, hard to believe 23 years ago, we had the benefit of a big buffer called the Atlantic Ocean. The people who wanted to do us harm were thousands of miles away with this huge backyard of blue water. That's been totally negated today with the path that people are taking to the southern border and making their way into the United States. And that causes me significant concern of when we don't know who these people are and what their intent is. We have literally possibly let people into our country who want to do us harm and allow them the ability to carry that out.
Well, thank you for investing your time and your care and thinking about those risks. And I know you're, just as much as you're thinking about the risks, you're thinking about how to mitigate them and how to keep our community safe. So let's end with a couple of reflections, both looking back and looking forward. So when you think about your 35 years of service, your 6 years as sheriff coroner, what are some of the major lessons that you've learned as you reflect back? And then I'll ask you, the other side of the question is, what do you think about as a vision moving forward into the future?
That's a great question. I think on the look back, what I've learned over my 35 years, and I've had tremendous opportunities within this organization. I work with great people, but the people are only going to be as good as the expectations you place upon them. Every deputy who comes out of my academy, I meet with in the first week. I talk about my expectations of them and what their expectations should be of me. They should have much higher expectations of me as their sheriff than I have of them. But I have to give them the 3 T's I mentioned before: create an environment for them to be successful, make sure they stay color them within the lines. If they want to go rogue and do something that will put their hand up and say, Sheriff, look at me, and if it's malicious, I will come after them, and they don't get to wear this uniform anymore if they violate the tenets of the public trust. They'll make mistakes. We hire from the human race. I'm not talking about malicious mistakes, but if they do something with the best of intent in their heart, and it might have been they fell a little short, I will show grace, get them back on their feet, a little better taps, get them back on course, encourage them and support them to do better next time. Because you can kill the spirit of somebody overnight by just seeing everybody's a nail and you're a hammer.
Yeah.
But if you do something that's so egregious or malicious towards the public, or intentionally, or towards a member of the department within, you don't get to work here anymore. And I think that message has been sent. When I talk to my peers nationally, and they talk about recruitment and retention, several of them have said, I don't want to do anything that would impact morale. They're so concerned about internal morale as a recruitment and retention tool. And I've told them, don't be concerned about that. I don't say this proudly, but I've fired more personnel in my first 4 years as sheriff than probably every sheriff before me combined. I just have an intolerance for behavior that's not meeting my expectations or the public's. And after you separate them out, the people who remain here, the deputies and other personnel, they sit up a little straighter, they stand up a little taller because you've identified behavior that's not going to be tolerated. Think about this conversely. Behavior that's not tolerable, that's malicious, and you say, oh, that's just Shelley, but Shelley's good. You know, Shelley, and we love her, so she gets to stay. What does that say to all the other people that are exceeding the expectations? Yeah. Oh, that's good enough? That's not the message you want to send internally, that's good enough. So I have no problem with that.
We're going to add the term accountability to our leadership file here. And that's what you're describing, in my view. You're talking about accountability and providing leadership to say we have to be accountable to these standards because we serve the public and we want to evidence the highest expression of this duty that we bear.
Well, there's two things that go along with accountability. The first is our reputation. And as I tell people, almost every instance of somebody falling short has been an individual lack of character decision they made. So everything starts with character. Character is who you are. Your reputation is what other people think of you. You can only control one of those two things. You can control your character. But if we have a combined, what defines the character of the organization, our reputation will follow. As I tell my staff, we're going to earn our reputation either way. It's going to be a positive reputation or it's going to be a negative reputation. But either way, we earn whatever we get. Let's strive to be that organization that earns a positive reputation. Now, I keep in mind that this is oftentimes a negative connotation environment. We're dealing with people during their days of crisis or stress, and we have to be cognizant of that. That might be the worst day of their life, and it can't be so mundane and routine to them that we're just going to take a report, check the boxes, and give them a card that has a case number on it. You have to have empathy in doing this job too, and see where we can lift people up and lean. We have to be that source to lean on for them as well. I think that's very, very important.
So what's ahead? What inspires you about the future of your leadership here, of the department, and the way you're serving our community?
Well, first, everybody in this organization is a leader. When I talk to personnel, I will often say, by show of hand, who in the room is a leader? And everybody's hand better go up because everybody's leading this organization in some way. I'm the little box at the bottom of the org chart. I'm not the big box at the top. I support them. They don't support me. I think from the construct of using that, in military terms, there's a supply line, and you're behind pushing this. You have to be walking with them, waving a banner, not driving them behind with a whip. And so I think you have to walk the talk, most importantly, with staff and model behavior and reward it when it's necessary with staff. But I'm proud of where we're going next. We mentioned the STAR facility. We're looking at other aspects of growth. We just opened our technology center earlier this year with our real-time operations center, which has already been hailed as another center of innovation on how we built this out. We're looking at other opportunities to represent, and even nationally how we're representing in the profession of policing. I'm privileged to serve on several committees nationally and have an opportunity not to fly our flag as the Sheriff's Department, being involved in the dialogue with other entities about how we have to work as one team, one mission, right? Because where we were 30 years ago going back, the Sheriff's Department existed as an entity inside this bubble called Orange County in Southern California, the state of California, the nation of the United States. And we are isolated and can operate that way. Those boundaries are gone. We now have to look at the common operating platform as a country. We're all dealing with the same issues. And what might happen in Orange County could happen in Washington, D.C. or Seattle, Washington, or Florida, or wherever. And the dialogue we have to have nationally about how we're going to protect ourselves. There's no such thing as one law enforcement entity anymore. It is a system of agencies that are interconnected laterally and vertically with our federal partners that are all looking at the same problems. And if we don't change the paradigm to look at our opportunity to intervene at that level, we are destined to fail if we think this is singles tennis. This is a team sport. We got to all play a position, move the ball. And I think that's an important way to look at how we're going to be successful going forward.
Well, Sheriff Barnes, thank you for being with us today. I know that I have learned so much through our now many conversations, and I hope all of the OC World viewers will now see why I love being able to learn more about the work that you're doing here. We talked a minute ago about what keeps you up at night. I believe that everyone in Orange County should sleep better tonight knowing that you and your colleagues, all of the leaders within this organization, are so passionate and diligent about keeping us safe.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and I wish all your viewers the best. And we're still privileged to live here in Orange County with one of the safest communities in the United States, and we plan to keep it that way.
Thanks for joining us today on OC World. Thank you to Sheriff Barnes for being with us and enlightening all of us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
I always tell people I was the luckiest guy in the world. I wanted to be an Army man or a fireman, and I got to do both. As a firefighter, my job was about saving lives. I never thought one day I would be fighting for mine.
After spending his career answering the call to save others, Ken was diagnosed with ALS. Now he's facing his biggest battle, for more time. For 70 years, Muscular Dystrophy Association has been answering the call to help people live longer and more independent lives.
MDA means to me hope.
MDA is leading the way for people living with ALS, muscular dystrophy, and other neuromuscular diseases by accelerating research, advancing care, and advocating to empower families like Ken's.
I wouldn't be living as good of a life with ALS if it wasn't for MDA. MDA is helping people live stronger and love longer. Learn more at mda.org today.